start with you, please, if I could. Okay, so at the end of the day, these are minor infractions. It is true some people in prison might kill another person while they're in prison. She has not done anything rising to that level. But what does it say to you, John, that she's got all these different violations? Does that affect whether or not she should get out on parole?
You know, actually, I got to call it like I see it. I mean, obviously, it's something they're going to consider. However, I think to put things in context, she served almost 11,000 days in prison. So I think that, to be fair, if you take someone that's 23, 24 years old, and you stick them in prison and tell them they're going to serve a life sentence, I'm pretty sure they're going to have some bad days. So I'm very hesitant to pass judgment on minor infractions over the course of 30 years. I think, once again, anybody is going to have some bad days, and they're probably going to do certain things that they do just to kind of get through sometimes, which is going to involve conduct that may not be something that involves the best judgment. You know, as far as having sex with the guards, I mean, technically, she did not commit a crime. The guards are the ones that committed the crime. So arguably, you know, although that one individual wanted to lay it all on her and say she was a manipulator and she was so cool, I mean, he's the one that had the power. You know, so you could argue that they actually took advantage of her because she is the inmate and they have the power, they have the authority. I mean, I think as far as marijuana use goes, I don't use marijuana, but I mean, you have 17, 18-year-old kids use marijuana. So I think they kind of really make a significant, you know, deal out of the fact that over 30 years, this 23, 24-year-old girl serving a life sentence, or what she thinks may be a life sentence. I don't put a whole lot of weight on that as far as being a significant factor in her release.
Yeah, and I will say this, if people want to know what it's like in prison, it's just like it is outside of prison in terms of the things available to prisoners, things that happen in prison, the drugs, the sex, all of these things. Yeah, they happen there. Larry, weigh in and also talk to me about this, because the reality is some of these infractions, I read through what happened to her as a result, and again, these aren't criminal charges, but rather infractions while she's serving her life sentence, and some of these things resulted in 6 months with no telephone privileges. 6 months. And you might think that would be enough to make a person say, I'm not going to do that again, because 6 months without telephone privileges arguably is a pretty severe consequence. But weigh in on this, Larry.
I agree with a lot with what the lawyer had to say. Okay, someone who's serving essentially a life sentence, they have nothing. You look at the people that will kill other inmates, beat other inmates up, commit assault, they have nothing to lose. What difference does it make? She knows or believes she's never getting out, so she is doing whatever she can to survive. But on the other hand, she also knows the policy. She knows the policy very well. She's been there for 30 years, and I think that if they let her go, and I'm not taking sides either way, I did 10 years myself in 11 different prisons. But I think it would set an example to the other inmates. Well, gee, you could go and kill people. You could kill your children, come to prison, violate any policies you want, and then you become parole eligible. I think the Mendez brothers are probably closer. Well, I don't know if they're going to get parole or not, but at least they complied with prison policy. Remember, somebody who's getting parole, they're still under arrest. If you violate parole, they can just grab you back up, bring you back in. They don't have to arrest you. She's already shown that she cannot follow policy. So there's a likelihood is that she may get violated rather quickly and come back in. I mean, who knows what she's going to do? She's not mentally stable. She didn't get any better while. I mean, a stable, normal person doesn't go and kill 2 of their kids.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to...
She's not going to make it on the outside.
And I'm going to come back to that legal point with you, John, in just a moment, the actual crime she committed. But while we're talking, let me ask you, Larry, one more thing. And what is it like? You're a prison consultant. What might it be like for her having killed children? That's the worst thing you can do from what you hear, and then going to prison for that crime, that conviction, those murders. What must it be like for her?
Okay, 2 people are the most hated kind of people in performance, the rats. No one wants to do anything with them, associate with them. And then people that like to play with kids, chelmos, child molesters. I mean, she killed kids. She's not in a men's prison. If she was in a men's prison, somebody probably would have stuck her and killed her by now. You know, it's a bunch of women. You're not going to have the same type of environment that you're going to have in a men's prison. I'm sure she's made some friends since she's been in there. Probably other lifers, people that have an out date, they're getting out eventually. I would tend to say want nothing to do with her. I mean, she's not a well-liked inmate. And as far as having sex with the guard, the correctional officer, she knew that was against policy. She knew everything she was doing against policy. We're not talking about some kid here. She's doing what she has to do to survive, but she has a history of breaking policy. And that's not going to play favorably with any type.
All right, John.
At all.
And John, we know that she's had a number of different jobs while she's been in prison: library helper, landscape laborer, food service aide, et cetera, et cetera. And does that, in your mind, make a difference she's doing those jobs? Does that mean necessarily she's going to go out and, if she's out on parole, actually start working and doing jobs like this?
No, I mean, it doesn't mean that at all. I mean, she's got to do something in prison. Everybody does. And I think she's going to have a hard time getting hired by anybody. I think what will be a significant factor in her favor is if at the parole hearing, there are potential employers that are willing to give statements or sign affidavits and or testify that once she is released, she will have a place to work. You know, whenever I have a client and I'm trying to persuade a judge to let them out on parole, give them probation, or something like that, what I like to demonstrate is that once they leave and they transition to the real world outside of prison, they're going to have some structure, a place to live, someone's going to hire them, because those factors, that structure, that stability, maybe it's a family network of friends and family, that is going to make it less likely for them to reoffend. But if someone has been in prison for their entire adult life, they really have forgotten how to function in the outside world. And when they transition to the outside world, if they don't have a job, if they don't have some kind of family support, they're going to go right back to committing the same crimes that they did that led them to prison in the first place.
And I see Larry nodding along. Thank you so much, Larry. We always appreciate hearing from you. John's going to stay with me. Still to come, what is going to happen at the parole hearing?